The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
we are now about to witness the truth.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Tuesday, April 25th, 2015. Thanks so much for joining us. You know what? I always start with small talk. I always do, but I never say anything that I don't mean. And what I was getting ready to say before I gave the caveat about what I was getting ready to say is that I really enjoy this time that we have together. I genuinely enjoy being able to talk about the politics of the day and dissect it as I see it. But more importantly, I like to hear from you. I like to get you to weigh in on the discussion. 857-600-0518 to give your feedback. We're streaming live again, and we'll be doing it going forward in perpetuity. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. So leave us a comment in any of those platforms, and we will incorporate. Please leave some good comments, people. Don't, but we'll incorporate it into the show. Thanks to all of our patrons for making this possible. We can't do it without you. As you can see, if you go to my timeline, you'll see, I think I have over 300 videos. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe it's 150. I don't know. I've got a crap load of videos that YouTube refuses to monetize. And so really, we're really just posting these videos online because we want to share them, right? And so we're fully supported at this point by patrons. And so thank you to all the patrons. As I do every show, I always like to give a round of applause and a thank you to you all. All right. That being said, I've got some deep dives tonight. I have maybe 3 deep dives that probably need 20 minutes each, and it's only an hour show. So let me stop filibustering and get to the news, and then we'll talk about the individual deep dives. Okay, so there's a couple things that's happening. Let's start with Donald Trump. He's backing off on his demand for the wall, or at least the demand for funding for the wall inside of this budget cycle. You saw on this week, Donald Trump threatened to shut down, to use the government shutdown as a possibility to pressure Democrats and Republicans into funding his wall. Jeff Sessions alluded to it in basically saying that we're going to do whatever we have to do to find money for Donald Trump's wall. Donald Trump has realized very quickly the political toxicity of that approach. Can you imagine? And before I go into the discussing it, but he's backed off. And he's backed off because this will blow up in his face. Now, can you imagine what it would be for the Republicans to have the government to shut down when they are in charge of all the branches of government? The House, the Senate, Congress as a whole, and the White House. So this would be political suicide for him. But more importantly than that, I think this is reflective of Donald Trump finally learning that he is not a dictator, that he is not some type of king that can just rule by edict and force the House of Representatives and the Senate to do whatever he demands. This is actually a job, contrary to what he believed prior to coming into the White House. This is a job that requires that he gets consensus even from people that are ostensibly on his side. And so instead of trying to jam this down down the throats of Republicans, down the throats of the Democrats, and threatening to shut down the government, Donald Trump is backing off. And I think he's backing off because, one, he's probably tired of losing, and especially within the first 100 days, how many more losses can he take? But then also because I think he's finally learning how the government works. And I put emphasis on that because it's a recurring theme that we see on an ongoing basis. Donald Trump doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He finally learns a little bit about it. And once he learns a little bit about it, he conforms to the status quo. That last part's a little problematic because there are some things that he should not conform to the status quo on, but that's an entirely different conversation. But in regards to shutting down the government for the sake of getting funding for the wall, it looks like Donald Trump is backing down from that because it would be political suicide for the Republicans to have the House, the Senate, and the White House and allow the government to shut down. All right. In other news, Donald Trump's sanctuary cities. So the U.S. District Judge from San Francisco, William Orrick, he imposed a nationwide injunction against against Donald Trump's January 25th executive order that was authorizing Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, to withhold federal grant money from quote unquote sanctuary cities. Or it called, and this is according to the Washington Post, or it called the order broad and vague, and essentially said that San Francisco is likely to prevail. And because San Francisco is likely to prevail in this issue, he put a blanket hold, a nationwide injunction against it. So in the proceedings, the government's lawyers suggested that cities and towns were overreacting to this, the government overreacting to the order because, quote, federal officials have not yet defined sanctuary cities or moved to withhold any funding from them. It's interesting. Well, actually, before I get into my commentary, let me give you one last quote that I think is very pertinent. And this is from the judge. He said, quote, the result of this schizophrenic approach to the order is that the county's worst fears are not allayed and the counties reasonably fear enforcement under the order. The threat of the order and the uncertainty it is causing impermissibly interferes with the county's ability to operate and to provide key services and to plan for the future and to budget. Now, this is his justification. So it's not a qualitative or it's not a moral based decision, right? He's not making a judgment call as to whether or not this is something the president should do. He's saying that because of the nature of the threat that hangs over these counties, they're unable to do their jobs. They're unable to plan long term because of this looming and this pending threat that's hanging over their head. That's number one. So he's not making a judgment call on it, but he has put a blanket hold. This is fascinating. This is fascinating because it's another addition to the loss column for Donald Trump. And it's fascinating because it's a demonstration of our system at work and seeing how the judiciary is able to hold the White House accountable, checks and balances. That's what they're there for in the first place. In context, or juxtaposed rather, to Jeff Sessions making the commentary about some judge on an island in the Pacific being able to put a hold on what on the president's agenda. And yes, this is right. This is the ability of the judiciary, and this is what they're here to do. Now, this doesn't mean that in the long run, Donald Trump won't be able to do this. But as we stand right now, this is what it is. I also found it interesting that in the list of cities that were included in this, you don't really hear, or we didn't really hear a lot about Boston. In response to the January 25th executive order, Mayor Marty Walsh, I mean, he was very vocal in terms of being willing to challenge the federal government on the loss of funds in order to force Boston to not be a sanctuary city. I find it's interesting that they are not involved in this and that it's not included because it was a direct challenge to the Trump administration and other cities. I mean, San Francisco gave a direct challenge to the president, and not only a direct challenge to the moral character of the actual executive order, but a challenge to the underlying premise that sanctuary cities are inherently dangerous, right? We've gotten to this place where facts don't matter. And simply because Donald Trump can say that sanctuary cities are uniquely dangerous, people are accepting that at face value. And we've seen the data. Many of the mayors have come out and promoted their cities and saying that even in spite of them being sanctuary cities, their cities are overwhelmingly safe. So we'll be definitely interested in seeing how this executive order being placed on hold, how this plays out. And will the government challenge it? I believe, obviously, they will. What's going to be the final result? We don't know. Here's a hilarious story. Let me adjust my seat for a second. Here's an hilarious story from our friend Alex Jones. Yes, Alex Jones. Chobani, the yogurt. Chobani is suing Alex Jones over a sexual assault report. So there was a suit filed on Monday in a district court in Twin Falls, Idaho, according to the New York Times, and it named Alex Jones and InfoWars specifically and their parent company, Free Speech Systems, as defendants. and it called false and defamatory several reports that, quote, appeared on InfoWars alleging that the company's factory in Idaho, which employs refugees, was connected to a 2016 child sexual assault and a rise in tuberculosis cases. I don't mean to laugh at the last part, but this does sound like I wasn't even aware that that Alex Jones went after Chobani like this, but this is absolutely sounds like something that Alex Jones would say. This is just right up his alley. This was based on the April 11th Infowars.com, and on his YouTube channel, he published some pieces saying that there were migrant rapists being hired, that they are employees of Chobani. He named them by name. This is what Alex Jones does, ladies and gentlemen. This is what he did with Pizzagate. Pizzagate was pushed so far and so hard by Alex Jones that now he's had to come back and apologize and to really deny or rescind everything that he said about Pizzagate, because he knows his audience. He knows his conspiracy theorist loving audience are looking from some vast conspiracy so that they can implicate, I don't know, every corporation, every Democrat, I don't know. But this is what his audience thrives on. And they need this. And finally, he's run up against a corporation that has said that they are going to sue him. And to be sure, sometimes it's not even the merits of the story, even though it sounds like in this case, it's pretty much a clear case of slander and defamation. But in this case, you're talking about a $1 billion company with corporate lawyers and money to burn going up against InfoWars, who does well. Can't shortchange them on how successful they are financially, but they cannot compete with the long bank of Chobani Yogurt and their parent company. So this is yet again Alex Jones's. Let me start that. This is Alex Jones writing a check with his mouth that his assets can't back up. That's exactly what this is. And I would be surprised if Alex Jones, in the midst of all of this, is able to keep up with the different lawsuits that are going on that are exposing. They're exposing his character. They're exposing his act. They're exposing the fact that all of it is just a sham. But then again, that would require his audience, who always sees a conspiracy in everything, to actually be able to rationalize and reason with the fact that they've been sold a bill of goods from Alex Jones. All right, let's get to some important news. And you could weigh in on the discussion, 857-600-0518. Leave your comments and your feedback. This is breaking news as of this afternoon. So the House Oversight Committee has informed us that Flynn might have broken the law. Michael Flynn, Donald Trump's former national security advisor, may have broken the law. Now, I want to start with a clip from Jason Chaffetz, he's over the Oversight Committee. I did not expect to really ever hear Jason Chaffetz say this about someone in a Republican administration, but this is what he said.
As a former military officer, you simply cannot take money from Russia, Turkey, or anybody else. And it appears as if he did take that money. It was inappropriate, and there are repercussions for the violation of law.
All right. So he's referring to money that Michael Flynn took from Russia Today in a speaking engagement in which he received $45,000, and also regarding him serving as a somewhat as a lobbyist for Turkey. And more importantly than actually doing these things is the fact that he did not disclose this information when he was going through getting a clearance for national security. You remember in this entire process, he went back and retroactively registered as a foreign agent after the fact. But in terms of where we are right now today, the House Oversight Committee, and it's actually bipartisan. Jason Chaffetz from the Republican Party, Elijah Cummings from the Democratic Party, they are now both stating clearly in no uncertain terms that it's very likely that Jason Chaffetz has violated the law. When Sean Spicer was asked about it today, he said, I don't know what he filled out or what he did or did not do. That all happened. He filled out a form prior to coming here. It would be up to the committee and other authorities to look at that. I don't know. I bring up that quote because they're putting distance. This is the White House putting distance, even more distance besides firing him. But they're putting even more distance between them and Michael Flynn, leaving Michael Flynn out there on his own to handle the issue that he caused for himself. And obviously he resigned after it came to light that he had conversations with Russian ambassador to the United States, Sergei Kislyak, discussing sanctions. More importantly than just discussing the sanctions was the fact that he did not disclose this to now currently Vice President Michael Pence. So Michael Flynn, I don't know how this plays out in terms of how much of a penalty he'll actually take. Will he actually be charged? Will he actually get time? I don't know, but I do know this. A few weeks back, he requested anonymity. He requested to be. Yes, thank you. He requested immunity in exchange for testimony, which means that a couple things happened. He either knew this was coming and tried to get in front of it, right? Or he has something that he wants to say about Donald Trump, because you're not going to get immunity if you don't have something valuable to the FBI and to investigators. I said all that to say this. If Michael Flynn has absolutely anything valuable on Donald Trump, you can guarantee that he's getting ready to pony it up sooner rather than later, because he's potentially facing charges here, and he already has demonstrated that he's willing to testify. The only question is, does he have something? Is there anything there? It could be quite possible that he has nothing and he's just going to face this on his own and take the time, if they even give him time. I don't know, but I do know that if he has something, he's already shown us that he's willing to give it up. All right, 857-600-0518 if you want to weigh in on the discussion. Last night in Arkansas, the Department of Corrections executed 2 men on the same night, the first double execution in the United States since 2000. This is after Governor Asa Hutchinson made it clear that he had every intention of executing 8 men before the end of April, because at the end of April, there was a particular component in their cocktail of chemicals that they use and solutions that they use for execution that was going to expire at the end of April. And I believe it's the first one, the sedative that puts them to sleep. The first component of their cocktail. There we go. That's what I wanted to say. Last night, they executed 2 men. The 2 men that they executed, both were, and this is important to the story, which is why I'm saying that they were both extremely overweight. And because they were overweight, the first gentleman, it took 40 minutes for them to find the vein in his neck for them to be able to administer the first sedative. So for 40 minutes, they were there trying to stick him in his neck, which is only the first thing that people have reported as being problematic. But this was the number one reason that the lawyers for the second felon, the second man on death row, they used that as their justification to get a stay. They got a stay, but the stay only lasted for about 45 minutes. I'm trying to give you all the background I can to finish setting this up. After the stay was overturned and it was ruled, they brought the second gentleman in and they executed him as well. He also had difficulty finding the veins. And from what an AP journalist described, is that you could tell that the men had a level of consciousness left as the remaining components of the cocktail that they used to execute people were administered. You could see their lips moving. You could see them gasping for air. And the 2 men, Marcel Williams and Jack Harold Jones, according to the vantage point of journalists that were there, suffered inhumanely. Now, part of that discussion, to be fair on the discussion, is the perspective of a journalist versus the perspective of, I guess, people who are not bothered by the fact that the people that they're putting to death, they're gasping for air and struggling. Right. And because it almost becomes, unfortunately, it becomes a qualitative, right? It becomes an objective kind of decision. Are they suffering or are they not? Well, to the AP journalists that were there, they say, yes, they were suffering. And this was the basis of the initial stay that was issued for Jack Harold Jones. I'm sorry, for Marcel Williams. But from the judges that were involved, from the executioners that was involved, people from the state, for the Department of Corrections, they didn't feel so, and so they carried out the second execution. Here's what bothers me. Here's what bothers me about this. Let me cut straight to it. The government should not be involved in executions for many reasons. Number one, because we get it wrong. Number one reason is because we have about a 4% rate of executing people who are innocent. And that is 4% too many. So we get it wrong. Number one. Number two, it is not state-sanctioned violence is something that we should avoid just as a matter of principle, whether it be war or whether it be the death penalty. Now, there may not be much that we can do as citizens to push back against state-sanctioned war. We have peace protests. We have anti-war protests. And there's really almost very much to nothing that we can get done there. But in terms of the death penalty, that's an introspective, that is an American issue, right? Because you think of the European Union. The European Union, for you to become a part of the European Union, you cannot have the death penalty. And this is actually the crux of the problem for which Asa Hutchinson was in such a hurry to execute these men, because he needed a particular drug that was being sold by nations, by companies that are founded and hosted in nations that are part of the European Union. And they were not going to be able to get access to these drugs because I don't know the legality of it, but there is a problem there for these nations, for these companies to be selling this drug, to be used even in the United States for executions. This is how against executions the European Union is. But here in America, it's like a part of our culture. It's a part of what we do. It's a part of our religious lexicon. Like, this is part of our religious jargon. Right? This is what Asa Hutchinson actually used, religious jargon, to justify his haste with which he was trying to carry out these executions. So it's so deeply rooted that it's not just a Republican problem. We have Democrats who are still in favor of the death penalty. One of the number one things that I did not understand the most was how Hillary Clinton could still be in favor of the death penalty. And it's deeply rooted not only with Hillary Clinton, but some Democrats, some conservative-leaning Democrats, and most certainly the Republican Party. And we get it wrong. We get it wrong, and we not only get it wrong in terms of innocence, but as we saw last night, we are not executing people in a humane fashion. It blows me away that we allow this sense of retribution to be carried out by our government. I understand on an emotional level why individuals would want to seek retribution and revenge. I understand it. I get that. But we need the government. Strike that. The government has a responsibility to not succumb to the demands of the individual rage and seek and journey and desire for vengeance. You would think that our government would be more enlightened, and you would think wrong, because we're not. Not only are we nowhere near in the United States a place where we could actually talk about banning the death penalty, but we're still in a place where the death penalty is wrapped in patriotism. The death penalty is wrapped in religious jargon. The death penalty is wrapped in ways that shows you the complicit nature of ideology, religion, and the state to use violence, and murder as a tool sanctioned by the state. The United States should not be in the business. No government should be in the business of carrying out state sanctions executions. And so last night, and there's still more of the 8 men on death row who are scheduled to be killed. And Asa Hutchinson is running it through, jamming it through, because he did not want the midazolam, the chemical that's used to put them to sleep. He didn't want it to expire. He didn't want the executions to go by and have this particular cocktail expire. I've even seen other states say, float legislation, if not actually outright pass it, legislation to say, if we can't use lethal injection, then let's bring back the firing squad. This is a level of commitment to the death penalty that I don't get, and that I can't stomach, and that I can't sit back and say nothing about, particularly from a religious perspective, because as much as religion should not be a part of the conversation, when Asa Hutchinson injected religion into the conversation, saying that this was his God-ordained responsibility, that really is a problem, because on so many levels, not only should we not have state-sanctioned executions, but we clearly should not have state-sanctioned religious executions or executions wrapped in religious ideology and jargon. All right, let's talk about there's a comment here on this particular death penalty case. Let's take a look at that and see what what's being said from YouTube. This is Michael Mike on YouTube. He said, I've read of people who underwent surgery with the same drugs and came out of it before it was over. Excruciating pain, but paralyzed, so they couldn't say anything or move. Exactly. And this is what the journalists who were reporting this stated, that they could tell that there was a level of consciousness there. So this is not, and so the final cocktail, so the first thing they do is they inject you, and it's a sedative that puts you to sleep. The second thing they do is they inject you with a second chemical that is meant to paralyze you, to cause paralysis. The third one is what causes death. It causes cardiac arrest. And if you are not completely put to sleep in that case, you are conscious and you are feeling the sensation of everything that's happening to you, of cardiac arrest, all the burning, all the parts that go with the final chemical in this execution. And so this is where the inhumane portion comes in, because what are we going to subject them to? Are we subjecting them to an 8-minute, a 12-minute, sometimes I think one case was 17-minute, 17-minute long, excruciating, torturous death? The very last excuse that I accept in this is that, oh, well, what about their victims? I 100% getting holding people accountable for their actions. However, using state-sanctioned murder is not a method that we should condone in the 21st century. Plus, there is a greater penalty involved in someone having to live with the reality that the world is going on around them without them being able to participate in it. Simply put, there is more to a life sentence. There's more, like, in many ways, some people see the death penalty as an out for them. And we have also seen the data that suggests that the death penalty doesn't persuade people not to commit violent acts, right? So besides it not being a deterrent, we've actually, in some ways, it's an out for some people, because they don't have to live the rest of their life until they're 80 years old, living with the reality that they're completely cut off from society. They're completely cut off from their family. They're completely cut off from life, love, and progress. So that is penalty. Right. So people to say, oh, well, they made this person torture and they killed that person, so an eye for an eye. Right. If we really carry that principle out, if we carry that logic out and we go eye for an eye, then none of us, all of us will be blind. We would not have and then most importantly, the reason the United States should not be involved in state sanctioned executions is because what moral authority does the United States have to kill somebody? What moral authority can they stand on to actually say that we have the high ground here and we're the ones that can execute you because you've done something wrong? With all of the blood on the hands of the United States of America from its inception, The United States as an entity, every individual state as individual entities have no moral authority as institutions to carry out executions because there's more blood on their hands than the combined men on death row. Maybe that's the whole point of it. All right, let's move on to the next story. Maybe I'll catch my stride by then. I'm finally waking up here. It's been a interesting episode. 857-600-0518 if you want to weigh in on the discussion. Let's talk about Obama's speech. I don't think I have any notes on that, but what the hell? I don't think I need any. President Obama is about to make $400,000 to give a speech to a healthcare industry connected on Wall Street. Basically, he's giving a $400,000 speech to Wall Street. And people are really, really upset about this. I can't really bring myself to be upset or even care. Because it's 100% what I expect, right? I had every expectation that Donald Trump is going to cash out when he leaves also. But this is what presidents do, with very, very few exceptions. Might be Jimmy Carter. But this is what Democratic presidents do. This is a natural culmination of third-way Democrats. Like this is why the Democratic Party moved to the right and moved towards corporate America more so than unions in the first place. It's because they wanted to be connected to those dollars. They wanted to be connected to Wall Street dollars. So I'm not sure why everyone is surprised. I get how distasteful, how this is unseemly. I get how people may feel that this is like almost like a quid pro quo, like maybe he would have done X in the White House, but he didn't do X in the White House because he knew he was going to get this payday afterwards. I get that sentiment, but here's the problem, and here's where I disagree particularly with the article written by Matt Iglesias over on Vox, because he said, I believe the title is Barack Obama has betrayed everything he believes by taking this money. Here's the problem. Barack Obama isn't betraying anything that he believes. He believes this wholeheartedly. He believes in Wall Street. He believes in the institutions. He believes in finance and capital. He believes in neoliberalism. So I don't believe that Barack Obama is selling anything out. This is who Barack Obama is. And I guess it's kind of like, why would I be mad of a Republican doing what Republicans do? I don't get mad. I just try to change it. Now, nothing I'm saying is saying that this is okay, that this is right. I'm just saying I don't get the outrage. I don't get the outrage because this is and here's the other thing I don't get. I don't get people who are saying that and I know I've said this, but I actually want to reiterate it. I don't get that people who are saying that he is betraying his principles. When Barack Obama was elected in 2008, by November 24th, 2008, he appointed Timothy Geithner from Goldman Sachs to be his Secretary of the Treasury. At that point, and then Summers, he appointed. I mean, just think about his entire cabinet in the 2008, before he even took the White House. The people that he selected clearly indicated to the world, at least to me, that he was not the economic populist that we thought he was. And I 100% get everybody who's saying, well, he campaigned as a populist. Sort of. Yeah, he was a good speaker. But even if he campaigned as a populist, when he made his cabinet appointments before he became president, everyone should have known and become very sober with the reality that Barack Obama believes in Wall Street. That Barack Obama believes in the neoliberal economic paradigm. He's not betraying anything to go and do these speeches because he fully, wholeheartedly believes in it. Doesn't change the unseemly nature of it. Doesn't change the fact that, he's making $60 million on this book sale. So it's not like he actually needs the money. But then again, like, I don't know what the hell I don't know. I do know this. I know he's not coming from generational wealth. I know he's not coming from having $100 million in the trust fund that he can. I know he's coming out of, actually coming from nothing to actually building something. I can't, I don't have any real issue with it because I don't think he's sold out because this is who he is. And how can you be mad about somebody doing what they really are? We could be mad at the structure. We could be mad at the institution. We could be mad at the fact that there's always been a revolving door in politics. We could be mad at the fact that this is just what presidents do. This is what people do with the hope of being the president. This is what Hillary Clinton did. I get it. And I totally get the outrage with the structural problem. But this vantage point of saying that this is too much money, that's ridiculous because this is what they do on Wall Street. Then the other take is, oh, well, he's selling out. I totally disagree with that. No way in the world is Barack Obama selling out because this is 100% who he's always been. I want to know what you think. Leave your comments in the comment section. Chime in on the discussion, 857-600-0518. I personally don't get the outrage at him as a person. I get the continued outrage at the reality that this is just what our system does. And unless we actually start electing people who are going to change the system, this is what the system is going to continue to do. This is what Wall Street does. This is what Jason Chaffetz is probably leaving the Congress for right now, so that he can go and get millions of dollars in the banking industry as a lobbyist, that he can go and get on a speaking network. I mean, that's it. I'm not even going to do any more deep dive. I was going to do a dissection of Matt Iglesias' article, but the underlying premise of his article is that Obama is selling out his principles, and I just disagree with that because these are Obama's principles. This is what he believes in. He's an institutionalist. He was never the progressive. This is the last thing I say about him. This is a concept that I got from Eddie Glaude. He said, and I don't know where he got it from, but I got it from him. Eddie Glaude Jr. from Princeton, he said that we green screened Obama, meaning that when we saw him running in 2008, people projected onto him their values, what they hoped that he would be, that they hoped that he would be the progressive that they thought that they wanted him to be. And all the time, if you go back and listen to his speeches, but more specifically, go back and read his book, The Audacity, Hope, and Dreams of My Father. Read those books. You will see that he was communicating to us his exact positions that he currently holds, which are neoliberal economic paradigms, which is meritocracy. He believes in pulling yourself up by the bootstrap, and some of the problem or the majority of the problems that people and kids, these black kids, need to pull up their pants. He has been touting that the entire time. But one of his talents, one of Obama's talents is that he's able to speak in vague language, vague inspirational language. And so people are able to green screen. You know, a green screen where you have a green screen and you can put anything up there, anything that you want. This is what people did. And so we believed for the longest time that Barack Obama was a progressive. So people were continuously being let down. Issue, Guantanamo Bay, let down. Not prosecuting the bankers, let down. Not breaking up the banks, let down. All these things, time after time, not going after the public option, let down. Not remotely going after a single payer, let down. People let down time and time again. And I guess maybe I had to take that into consideration. But for me, when he appointed Timothy Geithner as his Secretary of Treasury, I was like, oh, never mind. He's not the populist that we thought he was. So I guess I just don't have the ability to be disappointed in him. And because I kind of peeped early exactly who he was. He was not the progressive that we hoped that he was going to be. And this speech that he's doing, this is just what they do. This is what neoliberals do. This is the excesses of neoliberalism. This is how the political parties get in bed with corporations and get in bed with Wall Street and do what's in the best benefit of Wall Street. This is what they do because this is what they genuinely believe is the best way forward for America and for humanity. And I think the fundamental disagreement is that we totally disagree with that worldview. But you can't sell out to something when it's something that you genuinely believe in. So Obama's not selling out. He's just a genuine Wall Street institutionalist neoliberal. And, it is what it is. Here's where I want to break down. This is the story. I don't know how much time do we have left. I don't have my clock up here. Oh, 20 minutes. I need 20 minutes on this story. And you guys better, if you got something to say, you better get in before I get in on this story, because I've been trying my best. We can start the clip here. I have been trying my best to stay out of the relitigation of the primaries and out of this never-ending battle between Bernie stands and Hillary bots, Hillaristas, whatever the hell you call yourselves. I've been trying to stay out of it because it never ends. There is no end to this argument. It doesn't. I mean, there's no end to it intentionally, right? Because not just because people are still passionate about it, I get the passion, but strategically, people are still making money off of this. There's still clicks to be had off of this. There's still people writing columns about this because they know they could drive a good 10, 20,000 clicks, maybe even 100,000, depending on how good you write it. And so this is never-ending cycle of us fighting each other over the primaries. This is never-ending cycle of who's the de facto leader of the Democratic Party. And despite the polls indicating that Bernie Sanders is the most popular active politician in America, you know, you have a slew of journalists who are gatekeepers, who are kind of curators, if you think of it that way. They're trying to fight back against this narrative. And as they fight back against this narrative, they're regurgitating some of the same bullshit that they've been regurgitating since the primaries. And I've been trying my best to stay out of it. That's until I read this article by Anna March entitled "Bye Bye Bernie, He's Not Fit to Be Captain of the Democratic Ship If He Can't Stop Chasing the Great White Male." And the subtitle is even better. She says, the Democratic Party is selling out women and all marginalized groups in favor of Bernie Sanders' dangerous myths. Okay, let's go through the article a little bit. So her premise is that because Bernie Sanders has support for a pro-life Democrat out of Nebraska, that this indicates that Bernie Sanders is willing to negotiate on women's rights. This is the fundamental premise. Now, she mixed in identity politics for good measure. We'll get to that. But the underlying premise is that Bernie Sanders is not himself a real progressive because he's willing to negotiate on women's rights, particularly with abortion. Let's start with the evidence. Bernie Sanders, during the primaries, Bernie Sanders' entire career, Bernie Sanders' voting record, Bernie Sanders' track record on women's rights, abortion rights, it's clear. He is unequivocal. There's no exception. The government should not be involved in telling women what to do with their bodies. Hillary Clinton during the primaries, and we're going to play both of these clips. Hillary Clinton made it clear that she's 100% in favor of women's rights, abortions, and everything else, with one exception, late-term abortion, and that she doesn't want to rule out late-term abortion, but we could put some regulation on late-term abortion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't necessarily have a problem with Hillary Clinton's position, but she had some equivocation there. She had some caveats there. Bernie Sanders himself has zero caveats, and his voting record proves that. And so the underlying premise of this article is that somehow, because Bernie Sanders supports a pro-life Democrat in Nebraska, that somehow he is no longer good on women's rights. All right, before I go any further, let's play the first clip. This is Bernie Sanders saying where he stands on women's rights, and this is where Hillary Clinton says that she stands on abortion rights.
I happen to believe, and let me be very clear about it, I know not everybody here will agree with me. I happen to believe that it is wrong for the government to be telling a woman what to do with her own body.
All right, now here's Hillary Clinton. That was.
Well, I've been on record in favor of a late pregnancy regulation that would have exceptions for the life and health of the mother. I object to the recent effort in Congress to pass a law saying after 20 weeks, no such exceptions, because although these are rare, Brett, they sometimes arise in the most complex, difficult medical situations.
Fetal malformities in this.
And
threats to the woman's health.
All right. So, and again, I'm not playing this clip of Hillary Clinton to say that I disagree with her. Right. I'm playing the clip to show you that on abortion rights, Bernie Sanders has no equivocation. There's no exception. It's 100%. The government should be out of it. Leave it into the hands of a woman and her family and her doctor. Woman and the doctor, to be honest with you. Hillary Clinton, she has a pretty reasonable exception that she would make for late-term abortion. I'm not going to argue that. What I am going to argue is that you cannot write some drivel like this who says, basically saying that Sanders, this is a quote directly from the article, yet Sanders has made it plain that abortion rights are negotiable and brushes off identity politics. You cannot make that claim in good faith with being in journalistic integrity. You cannot make that claim in the face of the evidence, not just from the clips that I played, but based on Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood said, even though we're endorsing Hillary Clinton, we know that Bernie Sanders has a 100% track record on abortion rights. All right, that's number one. Number two, this is really, again, based on the fact that Bernie Sanders is willing to endorse a Democrat who actually is personally pro-choice. This is where the entire article hinges on. This is the logic that he hinges on. I want to play a clip of Nancy Pelosi basically saying that, well, anyway, I'll let her say it herself. This is Nancy Pelosi on abortion rights and Democrats.
But can you be a Democrat and the support of the Democratic Party if you're pro-life?
Of course. Of course. I have served for many years in Congress with members who have not shared my very positive, my family would say, aggressive position on promoting a woman's right to choose.
So can we take this sentence and now say that yet Nancy Pelosi has made it plain that on abortion rights are negotiable? You cannot logically say that, and you cannot factually say that about Nancy Pelosi, nor can you say that about Bernie Sanders. But this is the play. And I'm going to be honest with you. I hate to come down on Anna March. I invited her on the show, and I guess she'll get back to me whenever she actually sees the tweet. I'm not trying to come down so hard on her individually, but this is a continuous theme that permeates the conversation. We cannot get away from it because people have it's like a knee-jerk reaction. They knee-jerk react and come back to the identity politics, which we haven't even gotten to. But then also now they're throwing in this race in Nebraska as an example not as an example, as a means of undermining Bernie Sanders' popularity in the Democratic Party, when it's completely 100% factually untrue. So untrue that if you're going to apply that same logic and say, oh, Bernie Sanders supports a pro-life Democrat, therefore he is, I want to use her words exactly, that he has made it plain that abortion rights are negotiable because he's endorsed this pro-life Democrat in Nebraska, then what do you say to Hillary Clinton bringing on Tim Kaine as her vice presidential pick? What do you say to that? What do you say to the author of this article herself endorsing Tim Kaine, who is far more pro-choice than Bernie Sanders pro-life than Bernie Sanders would ever be, but also holds the same exact Catholic faith position on her own abortion as the candidate out of Nebraska? What do you say to that? Well, actually, let's put it on the screen. This is Anna March saying on July 22nd, 2016, welcome U.S. Senator Tim Kaine. Time to crush. This was at the announcement of Tim Kaine being Hillary Clinton's running mate. So can we now say, Anna, based on your endorsement of a pro-life Democrat, can we say this line, yet Anna March has made it plain that abortion rights are negotiable, and we'll talk about identity politics in a minute. Can we say that? Because if we can't say that about you, it is completely impossible and bereft of any sincerity, completely hypocritical for you to say that about Bernie Sanders. And again, this is just the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, I've been trying to avoid this conversation for so long, especially the B side. The B side of this conversation is about identity politics. But this is probably a good place as any to split the clip, because otherwise it's going to be a 20-minute rant. All right. Let's talk about the B side of her argument, of Anna March's argument in the article that says, bye-bye, Bernie. He's not fit to be captain of the Democratic ship if he can't stop chasing the great white male. The B side of her argument is that Bernie Sanders completely brushes off identity politics. And she said that in regards to economic populism and what this is directly from her article, she says, quote, economic populism and what are commonly erroneously and dismissively referred to as social issues, such as reproductive rights, immigration reform, and civil rights for people of color, those who have disabilities and people of all faith, are indivisible. Sanders routinely demonstrates his own lack of progressive values by dividing them. And I just want to highlight the comment that I put here. You're not going to be able to see it, but that's bullshit, Anna. Bullshit. Bernie Sanders has routinely. Why the hell do we even have to have this conversation anymore? The primaries are over. The election is over. Donald Trump is the president. Why are you even bringing this up? I love it when people say progressives need to move on. I would be glad to never have this conversation again, but you have neoliberal shills who can't help but to put out this crap on a regular basis, week in and week out. I would love to never have to relitigate the 2016 primaries or elections ever again. But if people keep putting out things that are disingenuous, hypocritical, and factually untrue, and logically untrue, or logically inconsistent, then I have no choice but to respond. So here's this is our second argument, that Bernie Sanders divides economics from identity. Now, I don't have to give this caveat, but I will. Bernie Sanders is so stuck in his ways and has the same speech that he's been doing for the last 30 years that he has not refined his language, but he has clearly demonstrated time and time and again, rally after rally, conversation after conversation, email after email, press release after press release, that he understands the necessity of communicating the issue of economics and race simultaneously. The irony of this particular portion of her argument, which has been parroted and recycled by everyone from the Wall Street, from not the Wall Street Journal, but the Washington Post, all the way down to Salon.com. The problem with it is that the irony, rather, is that these are the very people who do not want us to talk about the intersection of economics and race. They want us to talk about race. They want us to talk about identity. They want us to talk about all those things. But the minute we decide to talk about economics, we're talking about issues that are not important to race. Case in point, Hillary Clinton in the election saying, if we break up all the banks today, will that fix racism? First of all, this is fallacious at best, right? But a humongous red herring to deflect and to move the conversation off the original target. However, it misses. It's two things simultaneously. It misses the inherent connection, the interconnectivity between race and economics that exists in the United States from the inception of this country. That's number one. But number two, it's an intentional deflection to keep us from ever talking about the intersectionality of economics and the way that economics plays in every bit of racism that we've had in the United States from the beginning, the way economics plays into the decision to have an abortion or not. The reason that people, one of the number one reasons, according to the Guttmacher Institute, that women get abortions, and it blew me away, was because just economics, they can't afford it. It's not because there's some type of, and this is ridiculous coming from Republican talking points, that there's just some type of, debauchery and irresponsible women. Sometimes these are married women who cannot afford to have a child, and so they seek after an abortion. So even on the issue of a woman's right to choose, economics plays a tremendous part in it. And this is the factor that has been missing from the conversation for so long. We will talk about race, but we will not talk about how race is inextricably tied to economics in the United States. We'll talk about abortion rights, but we will not talk about the fact that the number one reason, according to the Guttmacher Institute, that women get abortion is because of economic instability. And so Bernie Sanders has been, and I'm so tired. I'm so tired of having to even say Bernie Sanders' name, because I'm tired of having to demonstrate this point time and time again. This should be settled. Let it forever be settled after this, which it won't be, but damn it, I'll try. Bernie Sanders has brought into the conversation for the first time in a long time the relevancy of economics to race, to abortion rights, to LGBTQ rights, to every intersection that we're concerned about. The intersection that has been erased for at least the last 30 years of the Democratic Party has been class. That's what they don't want to talk about, because you cannot talk about that without talking about the relationship between Wall Street and, to be so cliche, Main Street. But just in case you don't want to take my word for it, a random cursory Google of Bernie Sanders and race will yield a result like a video like this.
But let us be very clear.
while we have overcome a lot of racism, we have come a long way, we still have a long way to go. It is not acceptable to me, and I know to you, that an African-American baby, a male baby born today, if we do not change things, stands a 1 in 4 chance of being in prison during his life. It is not acceptable to me that we have seen young black men walk down streets in this country, be beaten and be killed unjustly. That is not acceptable.
That's just a random Googling of Bernie Sanders on race. At this point, there's no reason for me to even try to logically argue this, because they don't want to accept this. This is all it is. This is a concerted effort by people who either have a grudge against Bernie Sanders or people who are paid to have a grudge against Bernie Sanders to continuously try to divide the titular head of the Democratic Party. For all intents and purposes, he's the head of the Democratic Party. They're trying to remove him from his throne. I have plenty that I disagree with Bernie on. Not really. I have maybe 2 things that I really disagree with Bernie Sanders on. But his conversation on race and class has been the most robust that we've had on the national. And that's not saying a whole lot. It's saying that he brought the conversation back to include race and class. And you cannot talk about someone being intersectional if you're going to continuously erase the intersection of poverty and class. And it seems like you guys have everyone in the audience has a lot to say about this. So let's take a look at some of the comments from Facebook, a couple of comments from online about this. This is from Unspoken Voices. Let's really talk about women issues in terms of who and what in society decides to support. When black women / girls are harmed, silence. I agree with that. I mean, some of these same outlets, some of these same organizations that are parroting this information are silent when there's violence against black women. So I don't disagree with that. Let's take a look at the next one. Ben is 100% right from Randy Pyramid on Twitter. Sanders simply has a better voting record than Hillary Clinton on women's health rights. He does. He's more consistent on that because he has it's a simple position, right? It's very simple. What is your position on abortion rights? The government should stay the hell out of it. Leave it up to one woman or her doctor. And he ends the conversation there. It's simple, right? It's more clean. It's more precise. It's easier to say that than Hillary Clinton's exception. And I don't disagree with her exception. Not at face value. I mean, we can unpack it and debate it, but I mean, it seems pretty reasonable. But you cannot say that Hillary Clinton is good on abortion rights and not say the same thing about Bernie Sanders, who's further left on abortion rights than Hillary Clinton. Like Hillary Clinton has one exception, Bernie Sanders has none. They both have 100% voting record rating from Planned Parenthood, and they were all. There's really no way to discuss it in any other way, and to try to do so is highly disingenuous. Let's take the next one. JT Turner from Facebook. It's amazing how you're talking about the media and how they cover Muslim terrorism, but to avoid discussing right-wing terrorism. Then let's take a look at national news media. Skip the parentheses. There's not a lot of diversity in the news anchors on all major networks. Until the media adds diversity, they are always going to be biased towards what type of coverage is covered. You know what? I think he's referring to our conversation last night on the overrepresentation of stories on Islamic terrorism versus right-wing terrorism. But I think it's actually relevant in the context of this conversation. We don't have, what's the number one thing that you'll never see on TV? You'll see a black person, you'll see a gay person, you'll see a woman. You won't see a lot of women, but you'll see some. But what will you not see? You will not see a poor person on television talking about the issues of our day. You're not going to see somebody from the working class, black working class, white working class. I don't care what. You're not going to see that. And so we have zero representation in our politics or our media from the great majority in the United States, right? Lower middle class and working class. Most people are struggling economically, and we will not see that represented. And if we don't see that represented on television, we will never have conversations that Bernie Sanders tried to bring into the national dialogue. We won't have it because it's not represented. And without that representation, we'll always have rich people telling us, paying other rich people to tell us to not worry about economics. Let's take this last comment. From YouTube, from Rob Tomorrow, he said, the ironic thing is that all the attacks on Sanders from the neoliberal wing seems to be just increasing his popularity. I don't know if it's a direct cause, but there is a correlation, right? Bernie Sanders is still getting more popular. And this is another reason that I tried to avoid the conversation, because we're really talking about 3% of Hillary Clinton supporters who very fiercely, they just hate Bernie Sanders. In terms of, do you view Bernie Sanders, I'm trying to get the question proper, do you view him unfavorably? 3% of Hillary Clinton supporters said very much so, that they view him unfavorably. Everybody else likes Bernie Sanders. So it's a concentrated group of people, I think many of whom are paid to write this garbage, and you're probably going to find all of them on Twitter, this big group of people who simply cannot get over the fact that Bernie Sanders had the nerve to do anything but bow down to Hillary Clinton. Can this be, please, can this be the last time we have to talk about this? Let's let it go. You can't win the argument, not logically, not with journalistic integrity. You can't. Just leave it alone and let Bernie Sanders try to build unity with Tom Perez. Well, that's an entirely different conversation that I don't care to have right now, but let them do their work instead of using this clickbait to drive financial gain for people who still can drive clicks based on relitigating the primaries. I'm out this. All right, let's go.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.